All right. Thanks for putting questions on the comments of the last YouTube video. I wrote them down on this piece of paper and I'll answer them. I did not keep track of what usernames put down which questions, so no one's getting credit, but they were all great questions. And sorry if the wind noise is loud. I waited to film this video until it was comfortable being outside, and it's been really humid in Maine lately, so I am out here on a pleasant day for me, but maybe not such a great day for the audio. I have the questions divided up into quick questions and longer questions. We'll do the quick questions first. Are you a Triple Crowner? Yes, I'm a Triple Crowner now. Yay! How many cans of whipped cream? I have no idea, but I learned to get the bigger cans of whipped cream, and I would eat a big can of whipped cream in 2 servings, or like 2 meals. And that was one of the best parts of the trip. There's a question about my height and inseam. I don't know what my inseam is. I'm 5 feet 10 and a half inches. I never made 6 feet, which was disappointing for me. My hiking pace, I think, averages at 2.7 miles. I think 2.5 miles is a pretty standard hiking pace for most people, but it's not the speed at which you walk, it's the time that you spend walking. There's a question about daily mileage. If I didn't keep track of the days I spent just like as a hiatus off of trail, the mileage was 23.4 a day. If I added those extra like 40 something days, it went down to 16.7. There's a question about whether or not I push miles. I can. Pushing miles is relative depending on, you know, your ability levels and enjoyment and fatigue. Sometimes I push miles, but I like that. I think it's harder to not be activating my body in a engaging way. And I don't know, I like physical activity and playing sports and those sort of things, so I look forward to that level of effort. There's another echelon of pushing miles where I'm like unhappy about it, and I don't often push miles that way. How many zeros did I take? I don't know if I can remember. I don't often take a formal zero because it's like twice as expensive, because to do 0 miles on one day usually indicates spending 2 nights in a hotel, or 2 nights at a Trail Angels, or 2 nights in a hostel. And I like to get into town having done minimal mileage, so a Nero, spend the night, and then leave later the next day if I really need rest. I don't know, didn't keep track. How much did it cost? I don't know. I didn't keep track. I would say with the gear I purchased, especially for this trip, it was probably close to $6,000, and maybe a little more, maybe a little less. The sleeping bag that I bought for the winter was $1,300, just to like put a framework around how much gear can cost sometimes. But that meant that I didn't spend many nights in a hotel when it was very cold. I felt comfortable staying out, which maybe didn't recoup the entire $1,300, but certainly recouped part of it. Will I share future hikes? I don't know. Hopefully, maybe. We'll see. How many shoes? I just went through 2 pairs of shoes. I have found a pair of shoes that really works for me, and they might not work for you, so the brand isn't really important. I made it as far as Harper's Ferry on my first pair of shoes, and then had expected to get the same pair of shoes that I'd purchased for like half off earlier from my mom when I would see her in Pennsylvania, but the shoes were like really wrecked, so I bought another pair that didn't really work well for me, and I ended up sending those home with my mom 150 miles later. So 3 pairs of shoes total, but one only had like 100 miles on it. Will I go back to get a tag? No. Tag, like the little National Scenic Trail shaped tag, doesn't really mean that much to me. And yellow's not my favorite color. And that was the color of this year. Someone asked about the orange beanie brand. I just got it from Walmart. which is kind of disappointing, but that's where I found it. Do I travel sober? Yes, I do. Cold soak versus cooking. In the winter, there was plenty of time when the sun would have gone down, and so I had nothing to do from like 6 to 7 the next day. And it was cold, so there was a lot of enjoyment in cooking. If I'm hiking in the middle of summer, I'll usually cold soak because that just seems to fit the experience better for me, and the temperature of food isn't as important, and the time around the campfire, so to speak, cooking food doesn't seem to happen as frequently because I generally walk most of the daylight hours. Someone noticed I had a larger bag during the winter, and then I took time off, and when I came back I had a smaller backpack. I have a 40-liter Palante pack, which is my small, and I have a 70-liter Hyperlight backpack, which is the large one. I am not a fan of the Hyperlight pack. Maybe a smaller litered frameless pack makes sense, but the 70-liter Hyperlight bag I have is kind of like just that frameless tube, but where that makes sense in a 40-liter capacity because it's small and compacted, it really kind of gets like not so, I don't know if ergonomic is the right word, but it doesn't really work the same way. Like the concept doesn't really scale up to 70 liters. At least I don't think so. And yeah, I bought the Hyperlight pack because it's a main company, but then I found out that they don't make them in America, so I was like, what the heck? So, boo Hyperlight. Best items for trail. Bidet. Backcountry bidet is a game changer for sure. There are lots of different brands, but I have a Kulo Clean and it works great. Why did I do the AT this year? I wasn't able to find employment last fall and was pretty discouraged about it, and so just went for it. Which is harder, the mental or physical challenge? I think the mental challenge is harder. For me, I've often remarked that if a thru hike extends over 100 days, I get like really frustrated and want to go home. I enjoy thru hiking, but it also gets kind of tiresome, and it's very like separated from the image of a well-rounded life that I kind of pine for sometimes when I'm away from home. It's nice to have friends. It's nice to take a shower after you exercise. It's nice to cook healthy food. It's nice to feel like you're contributing to the, betterment of society through some sort of work. And those things are hard for me to feel like I can take part in, when I'm on trail. And that's just because of the location that I come from. Like, I have had a hard time finding the work that I'd like to do. And so when I'm on trail, I still feel anxious about how I couldn't find work, as opposed to someone who's like, worked a lot and needs a vacation. I have my opinions because of the experience I've had. Do I have biking plans? Yeah, I'd love to ride cross country one day or 1 year, one summer. I'd love to ride from Alaska to Patagonia. That'd be really cool. I listen and watch people who ride around the world, and that sounds crazy too, but I don't have any set in stone plans. Is there an easy trail up Katahdin? No. Katahdin's really hard. It's very vertical and it's very bouldery. So yeah, it's an intense mountain, and you have to get to the top and then get back down, and all the rocks that you had to climb going up, you have to climb down with fatigued legs. And when you fall uphill, you fall into the mountain, but when you fall downhill, it's like, oh wow, that could be like 6 feet down onto another jagged rock. It's like pretty dangerous. So I think probably the easiest trail, which is not an easy trail at all, is probably the AT, just because it puts you onto the plateau of the mountain sooner, and so you get to spend more time at a relatively easy elevation change. But maybe that just means that it's more steep earlier in the trail, so it's like even more intense. I don't know. Do I have recommendations for an AT section hike? I think if you want to do a section hike, the best way to do it is in the off season, when it's going to be least crowded and the temperature is going to be most comfortable. and you should just go wherever it's easiest for you to get to, like wherever is cheapest, wherever is quickest. That way you can actually make it happen. Doing a section hike doesn't need to be like a whole big trip. It can just be like, oh, I'm driving to the part of trail that's 2 hours away, but when the fall colors are out and when it's not going to be buggy and hot and sticky, and I don't have summer vacation, so I don't have time to go really far away to somewhere awesome, but instead I took an extended weekend in the fall and went somewhere when the conditions were really awesome, and so maybe the more basic area I went to was actually really nice. Section hikes should be easy. They don't need to like be expensive and hard to do. Do I have a continuous footpath? No, I don't. I haven't missed any miles, but I don't like touch the same stop sign or the same tree at every road crossing. So like sometimes while I'm walking north, I get to a road and I hitch in off the right side of the road into town, and then I hitch back on the right side of the road to get back to trail. And so I've crossed the street without actually walking across it. Like, to have a continuous footpath, you really got to have a continuous footpath. I don't have that. One time in Vermont, I hitched from the road, and then someone dropped me back off at the end of the parking lot, and I could have interrupted them to have them drop me off right there at the end of the parking lot, but then I didn't want to interrupt them while they're talking, and then they dropped me off at the end of the parking lot, and I would have had to walk all the way back while they're trying to back the car up and pull out, and that would have confused them. And then that was just so much social energy that I didn't want to expend on getting my continuous footpath, so I didn't do it. It's really not that big of a deal. I walked the whole trail. I got back on exactly where I left off. So yeah, it's fine. You walk a lot of town too. It's okay. Favorite section or hike of the AT? I enjoyed Katahdin. It was kind of a bummer. I'll talk more about the day, but it's nice to always have a novel experience on a mountain you've gone up so many times. And I've done Katahdin many times, so it's cool to have a new experience in the rain. The Smokies were cool. I had hiked them in the summer, and so to do it in the dead of winter was like a big contrast. That was really fun. Someone asked about the hardest mile. I don't know if that inquiry is it's fine if it is or if it isn't, but I wonder if it's wanting to scope out what's the hardest part of trail, because I want to get excited about it. I don't know that my hardest mile equates to anyone else's hardest mile. Mahoosuc Notch felt dangerous because there was snow, and I would post hole knowing that there was just space. So it was kind of scary. But was it that hard? No, it's just kind of frustrating. Katahdin is hard. So is Mount Washington. So is descending off Madison. So is the mile where you don't have enough food and you're really hungry and it's raining on you, and that can happen anywhere. So I don't know. Advice for a trip to Maine would be the same advice I have for recommending an AT section. Go when it's easy for you to go and the weather is good. And then I would recommend, when you're in Maine, go to somewhere beautiful and actually spend time there. I grew up with a mom who wanted to drive to places and I always got pretty frustrated with that. It's easier to just go somewhere and then spend time outside. You don't need to drive to the next place. You're already at a beautiful place, you can just be there. That'd be my advice when you go to Maine. It can be in the mountains, it can be on the coast, whatever you prefer. Someone kind of made a fun comment, happy to not have waited until you were old. I think maybe that comment came from trying to express about how difficult it can be to hike the trail when you're old. So yeah, I'm happy to have done these things when I'm young. But also I've missed out on a lot of things that my friends have been up to, and it looks pretty good too, so I guess I'll do those things when I'm old instead. Yeah. Someone also asked about what the most surprising AT section was. I'd probably say the Whites, just because I'd never been there before, even though they're so close to home. So I was finally oh, this is what it is. And that was fun. Now we're at the longer questions. Did anyone else track you down on trail? No, thankfully not. I kept delaying my postings, and then by the time I came back on trail, I didn't even start posting until I'd finished trail. Yeah, I guess one of the things I don't really enjoy about having a YouTube channel is like when it gets in the way of having whatever the organic experience with someone would be if they didn't know who you were already or didn't think they had, some expectation of who you were. So it's just nice not to have to deal with that. Thanks. Would I have liked to have traveled with a partner? That's a great question. Yes, I would love to travel with a partner. But at this point in my life, I'm happy to not compromise, not sacrifice. But yeah, I get as lonely as the next human being for sure. And, wish to share the things I love with someone else who also loves them. So, yeah, it'd be fun to crush miles with someone. Yeah. Why did I take 6 weeks off? Because there was a lot of snow in New England, and I didn't want to deal with that. I got to Massachusetts on Monday, Thursday, and or the Wednesday before or something, and knew that my friends were heading home for Easter, and knew that there was a bunch of snow in the Whites because I have friends there who talk about it, and knew that there would just be a lot of grit and suffering and hard work necessary to keep going at that time. And I figured I could go home and have fun with my friends and show up for my parents' birthdays and the holidays, and apply to more jobs, and hopefully carry those conversations on when back on trail, and that's what happened. So it was good. And then I got back on trail when it looked nice. Someone asked what the most dangerous experience was. With a winter hike, that was probably related to weather. It got really cold the first week I was out there. There was like a deep freeze last winter, and I was out on trail during the tail end of that week and a half. So, I just chose to believe that my 0 degree sleeping bag would work. And it did. But there were some limits of experiences I'd never had before that I just went for in the cold. How hard was the hike on my body? Not particularly hard, especially because I wasn't in the winter able to hike so many hours a day. There was lots of rest, and so it felt very comfortable. And I'm used to New England, and so that was fine too. It's really windy right now. Sorry about the wind noise. I'm sure it's pretty bad. Is movement how I manage stress? Yes it is. If I can't spend part of my day moving, I don't really think of it as having been a very fun day. Someone asked why I complained so much when I got back on trail. Because it was hard, and because it was really sweaty and hot, and I couldn't see anything. There were bugs everywhere, and it was raining a lot the first week maybe. I guess I was just grumpy. Sorry about that. Which season did I prefer? I preferred winter. Yeah, it was more fun in winter. That's not because the trail is best in winter. That's because winter's more fun than spring, I think, on the East Coast. When did spring arrive? Between when I got off trail and got back on trail, I always kind of was accelerating ahead of spring's arrival. I remember seeing some daffodils in Pennsylvania, I think. And it's like, oh, spring's here. But then I accelerated ahead of spring again. But the southern spring kind of feels like a Maine spring. I mean, the southern winter kind of feels like a Maine spring. So it was okay. Someone asked how I handled blisters, rashes, and hygiene. I think the Culo Clean bidet I have goes a long way. I used to get butt chafing a lot, and the bidet really helps with that. And my feet have gone through so many iterations of re-blistering and callousing. I don't really get foot blisters that badly anymore. When they do happen, I usually just let them happen, and then 3 or 4 days later, I will pop them and drain them. If they're continuing to expand, then I will drain them sooner. But I've never had like a total bottom of the foot blister or something like an inch by inch or whatever. Yeah, but I just let them dry and air out, and I take my socks and shoes off and bathe my feet in water pretty frequently. Having walked in winter, rashes weren't really that much of a threat, so I don't think I ever got any on the AT. But just treat that area with kindness, bathe it with water, make sure it can air out and dry, and don't scratch, slap. If you have a bug bite, it's really driving you insane, just like slap it really, really hard, and then the pain of the slap will desensitize the itching of the bug bite until it's passed over, and then you can slap it again when it comes back. Someone asked what I would do different on trail. Nothing. I really enjoyed the hike. I can't think of anything right now. I'm sure I could think of other things at other times. But if I hike the AT again, I would probably do like a fall hike. That would be really fun. Post plans. I got a job. Yay! So I will be pursuing the next step in my chaplaincy certification, which is part of the educational process. You need a master's in theological training, and then you need to get your certification through a process called clinical pastoral education, which is a supervised group process where you work for less money than you're worth, and you do homework after you work, and then at the end of it, hopefully you've completed your professional outcomes and you write a big paper in addition to all the normal small papers you do, and then you get certified, and then you can get a real job. So I'll do that. And before that, I'm really, really excited to do some more walking this summer. I don't know that I'll be able to share it on YouTube, so the specifics I'm not going to list. You'll just find out about it if I post it on YouTube. Someone asked about trails abroad, specifically the Camino, or El Camino de Santiago de Compostela, and Mount Everest. I'm not much of a peak bagger, so I don't really think I'll ever do Everest. It's like a lot of money for not that much of an experience, I think, as well. And I will be walking the Camino this summer. That's something my brothers really wanted to do, and so we're going to go to Spain. I don't know if I'm going to film it, but there's a specific. I'll be in Spain walking on the Camino. And if I do more travels abroad in the future, I would want them to be religiously focused, because I have a lot of personal interest in that aspect of humanity, and that would be really fun. Go to Israel or go to Spain and do the Camino, or do some sort of pilgrimage in Asia. That'd be really cool. Someone wanted to know what happened on Mount Katahdin. Yeah, I can describe that. I woke up the morning of Mount Katahdin not expecting to summit that day, but the really intense humidity had finally formed into a storm front, or the storm front had finally moved into the area, and so it had rained that night, and it was drizzling in the morning and threatening to pour after 11, and I walked to the bridge and A-Ball Bridge and the campground. I got some snacks, and then my friend Cloud Kicker caught up to me. Those are, by the way, like the coolest trail names ever. But Cloud Kicker was like, I'm going up, and it's like, all right, I'll walk to the base with you at least, and we'll see. I had planned on summiting the next morning with my childhood friends. I was really hopeful for that, and was pretty discouraged about the weather. And we met the kind of greeting ranger, Donald Duck, there at the campground, and he was really cheerful and wonderful. And then we walked up to the campground and talked to a young guy who was a ranger there, and he was very discouraging of any hiking of Katahdin that weekend, but certainly the hiking that we thought about doing that evening. It was already 2:25 or something, and 2 p.m. was the turnaround time on Katahdin. That they set a turnaround time halfway through the daylight hours. So if you haven't summited by halfway through the daylight hours, the rangers really encourage you to turn around. Baxter doesn't carry at this time a robust enough of a task force to do rescues on Katahdin, at least with any like frequency or assurance. That's kind of the main culture, which the Mainers really like. Like, if you shouldn't be up there, you shouldn't be up there, and that's your business, not other people's. The ranger was, very discouraging of us going up, but wouldn't stop us, and said that if we got injured and we're up there, we'd be up there until people went up the next morning. And Cloud Kicker really wanted to go, and I asked the ranger what the next day's weather was, and the ranger the next day indicated there were going to be thunder showers and a continuation of the rain. And so I was like, screw it, I'm not going to not summit if tomorrow my friends get here and don't feel comfortable going up. The ability level of, what my working life friends would show up to Katahdin with was very different than someone who had just hiked 2,000 miles on top of multiple other trail experiences. And so I decided to go up with Cloud Kicker because I didn't want to leave him alone going up to the top, and wanted to assure that I touched the top and then could go up again the next day. And Cloud Kicker and I went up at 2 and got to the top at 4. Maybe we had started at like 1:50, maybe 2:25 wasn't the right time, but it was right around that turnaround time. It took us 2 hours to get up. We were at the summit for 5 minutes and had to wipe, like, everything was soaked. We had to wipe our phone screens on like some part of the body that wasn't wet to then get the screen reactive enough to our body's oils instead of the water all over the screen to then take a photo. And then we left because it was really cold and horizontal wind and rain. And then we came down the A-Ball Trail, which is one that gets you off the height of Katahdin a little bit earlier than the Hunt Trail does, which is the White Blaze. And we went down to the bottom, and that descent took us 2 hours. So the, 10.5 mile round trip of the Katahdin summit and the 4,000 plus elevation took us 4 hours in total. So that's, the speed that most people, maybe a little faster than most people, walk on the normal parts of trail. We did up Katahdin, like there was no stopping. We just went for it. And we got down shortly before 6 or shortly after 6 and hitched a ride into town. Put on our best cheesy faces and got a ride with this really nice family, kind of an eclectic group, but they were very kind to pick us up. And we got into Millinocket and stopped at the hostel there and took some showers, and my friends picked me up. We decided to go back to Bangor, where my friend has an apartment. That was the end of trail. My friends were pretty upset not to hike Katahdin the next day, but understood the real risk of going up when there's thunder and the rain and the temperature was very low. One of the things that was interesting is on the ascent up Katahdin, it was very warm because I was moving and exerting. And then on the way down, you can feel your temperature continuing to drop, and that, incentivizes you to go faster and go harder to keep your temperature up. But that exponentially increases the risk of falling, which is like the real risk. So I can remember going down with Cloud Kicker, just like taking a mental note of where my body temperature was at out of 10, and then just like ticking it down as it continued to decrease. And I think I got down to 6, which is okay, but that's like pretty cold. And then we hit tree line, and then it went back up. So it's all good. But it's a good memory. I was hoping to like bask in the sun at the summit for a while. That didn't happen. That's all right. Someone asked me to compare the different trails I've walked. I'm a big fan of smaller trails. I've walked the Oregon Coast Trail as well as the Pacific Crest Trail, Continental Divide Trail, and Appalachian Trail. And the Oregon Coast Trail was really fun because it was short. They're all great. They all have different things. I think the PCT is graded the easiest. The weather has its own challenges, but if you're willing to walk earlier and later, it's really not that big of a deal. And you don't need to be as intimidated about the mileage because the mileage between waters specifically, because it's easier to walk those distances on the PCT than it is on the AT. But you have to be willing to put in the time to walk those distances on the PCT. So different cultures emerge on different trails because of that. The CDT exposes you to many of the same difficulties of the PCT, but just at a higher intensity. And you have to be more willing to embrace the suck on the CDT than you do on the PCT. There's less reprieve, whether that's shade or whether that's a smiling face from the plethora of thru hikers that are out there with you, or whether that's trail magic or just a culture that surrounds the trail. The PCT has more people, so it's built up more than the CDT. But the CDT feels much more wild. Like, the animals on the CDT are incredible. That's really fun. And grizzly territory on the CDT, I think it would be really healthy for the hubris of every human being to just exist in the territory of an animal that is bigger and stronger than you. Oh yeah, okay. That's a humbling experience. I think it'd probably be really healthy for many of us. The AT's fine. It's just walking in the woods. If you like walking in the woods, the AT is nice. And then there was interest about post-trail depression. I think post-trail depression is something that emerges in the contrast between the goal-oriented, outsideness, endorphin-filled, beautiful existence of trail, and that's contrasting with the life that you return to at the end of a great journey that you've accomplished, and it could certainly feel like you're in a lurch, kind of come home, and not many people really understand what it is you've gone through, and you can try to articulate things to them, and it doesn't always feel like it's getting through, or people are listening well, or people are interested in what you think are the important parts about your experience. And then it can be really hard to set a new set of goals and find a tangible way to move towards them. On trail, you just can walk towards your goal. Off trail, sometimes it feels like a lot of hurry up and wait, or your ability to move forward is contingent on other people's decisions instead of your own willingness to get up and go. So you apply for the next job, and then you wait for 2.5 weeks for them to finally email you. What do you do for those 2.5 weeks other than feel really anxious and kind of depressed, I guess? So the recommendation I have is just to try to keep yourself as busy as possible doing the things you like, and remembering that it's still just the day you're living. That's the day you're living. And getting outside and doing things that involve movement, like riding your bike or going for swims, or if you have access to water, not everyone does, or going for runs or walks. I think trying to push those boundaries still is great. Trying to eat intentionally healthy food and enjoying the process of cooking is a really wonderful contrast to trail. Your diet changes a lot when you get off trail, and a lot of the times I think people gain a lot of weight because they're used to eating a certain way, and then the lifestyle that you get with off trail doesn't make space for that same diet in the same way. But I don't know, just trying to take intentional steps towards the things you enjoy and towards the things that are good for you, even as you're stuck waiting for other people to make decisions about your life, it's probably pretty good. And yeah, those are all the questions. Thanks for asking them. I'm excited to see what some of you might put in the comments, and just want to say thanks again. It's been pretty fun to experiment with this YouTube thing. Yeah, hope you all have a great rest of your day. Bye.